Hello and welcome to the Serpent Temple podcast. This time we're doing a weekly review. We're going to be looking at 3 albums, the first of which is the 2016 debut of the band Hashashin, entitled Nihsahsah. And the second is going to be Helloween's Keeper of the Seven Keys, Part 2, released in 1988. The third will be Carcass's recent release.
Excuse me.
That's the release. That's the release. It's an unsayable word. No, Carcass's recent release called Torn Arteries merely weeks ago came out in 2021. So Floyd, what did you think of Nihsahsah?
So as I was saying, off camera, totally not during a failed video attempt. No, I thought the album cover was really cool. I like the way the name of the album was kind of mirrored underneath the name of the band. I thought that was super cool. I think the etymology behind the name's really cool as well. Yeah. It's quite a cool fact. It's because if I'm not mistaken, it's some of the original assassins, or the name derives from a term relating to them having to take hash before joining.
On a hunt.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Hashashin would partake.
So do you think you just had a group of really stoned assassins just being, I can't be fucked next time?
I think part of it, I think it, obviously it's the strain, man, but I think there's some that heighten your senses, right?
Yeah.
And I think they would train with them to heighten their tolerance and stuff. I know the Scythians, or the Scythians, however you pronounce it, who are kind of Ural steppe warrior race, they invented the compound bow, the really amazing,
cool,
really savage ancient people, and they would smoke using bongs made of sticks in a teepee shape, and then they put skins on them. They'd stick their head in there and just get high as fuck. And they were the only kind of people at the time who would drink wine unwatered. Yeah. So the Greeks described them and the Persians described them as utter savages, because they drank their wine unwatered. I mean, Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah. I should see people in Glasgow drinking Buckfast at 3 a.m. in the morning. Buckfast.
That's the name of the
that's
festival.
A new festival I'm starting, yeah.
They must be descendants of the Scythians.
But in terms of the actual music itself, I really enjoyed it. As I was saying as well, it kind of felt like I was climbing a metaphorical mountain of enlightenment. And I really enjoyed the instrumentation that was going on this album. They've described the sound as a psychedelic. Oh, great! I found it so easily first time around. I can't find it anyway.
Look for the word dog. It was psychedelic drone doom. Was that what it was?
Drone prog.
Drone prog.
Psychedelic drone prog.
That was it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty apt name because there's some pretty dizzying kind of guitar work, and the drum work is insane.
It's fantastic.
It's kind of really kind of free form, kind of jazzy, a lot of fills, very fill heavy, a lot of crazy, super loud cymbal work as well. I think one of the things I was thinking when listening to this album was I liked the fact that the production was quite abrasive and brash.
Yeah.
Because I felt like if the production was too kind of sterile and clean, I wouldn't have been anywhere as interested in this album. Because I felt like it just would have sounded too clean cut, but it had that aggression to it and just that kind of raw energy to it, which I thought really kind of elevated the music. But just really cool. There's just some great. It's always a funny one when an album doesn't have any vocals in it, because it's something that always draws me to an album first. Typically tends to be the vocals. So it's always a testament to how good an album is when it's basically an instrumental album. I mean, there's some chanting in one of the songs, right, which is used pretty effectively, actually. But for the most part, it's but it keeps things interesting. And yeah, it seems to climax towards the middle track, Levitation, which is quite a kind of a foreboding kind of melodic track. And then and then there's this really cool kind of really imposing riff towards the end before it kind of just eases up again. And I felt like it's definitely the title, the names of the tracks kind of really lend to the music, which is something I like in a lot of albums as well, because I felt like even the one of the tracks, Moksha, which I looked up what that was, and that's it's escaping the cycle of rebirth opposed upon by karma.
Samsara.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
We covered that when we were talking about
Om.
Yeah,
which is very similar concept to the Om album.
And there was some great, I'm presuming it's pronounced Bouzouki?
Yeah, it's Bouzouki. Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
There's some great, like, really kind of dizzy and bouzouki work there, and I think they've done a great job of implementing that instrument into like the array of the madness going on with all the guitars and the drums, which is just pretty frenetic a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's stunning work. I really enjoy it, and I really picked up on the like, I like that the concept of the album in terms of like the ordering of the songs, what's included in the songs, and also the name of the album too. Like the fact that it's mirrored in the album name. It took me like 5 years to work out. It's like Nihsahsah.
Yeah.
Sorry if I'm butchering that. It's like Hashashin backwards. I should have really. It's like so obvious. But yeah, like, you know, the tracks, so prostration, the ascetic, immolation, levitation, ascension, disintegration, moxa, derg, and rebirth. That's samsara. It's the cycle of life. And then you've got
Gotcha.
like the reflection of the band name and the cover and the symmetry, and that's like, it's really it's like super kind of obviously religious in that sense, not necessarily in like a worshipping a specific religious sense, but it's going into the philosophy of religion, which I really love. That is something I adore in music, which is ironic because so much metal is actually anti-religious, so I actually love religious metal in a way. Not that I am like myself into practicing it, I just love learning about it.
Do you think that could potentially be because I feel like so much music is interwoven into religion, and so much religion is kind of enhanced by the musical aspects, whether it be through like some of the prayers that are sung and I feel like a lot of that is lost on a lot of modern music, right? Because like I said, especially in the metal scene, because it's all about really kind of rebelling against that. And I feel like it's such a common trope, and I've said it once before. I've said it probably about 100 times before about how I just think the whole anti-Christian shtick is just so overdone and oversaturated at this point. Like I couldn't think. There's no quicker way to turn me off an album than it being labeled as like a satanic or like an anti, just fucking theistic sort of. So I'm just instantly. So no, I agree with you. I think it's quite cool because I feel like, you know, for me personally, music is something that can bring you closest to what could be described as the soul.
Yeah. And for some people, that's divinity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, it kind of goes hand in hand with the religious concepts a lot of the time, because it's about that inner enlightenment. And, you know, like me personally, I've always seen religion as a metaphor for finding that kind of inner peace and inner strength, which I think, you know, is has been lost in the way religion has been kind of marketed in some countries. I mean, if you're looking like in the West, for example, in America with all the churches and stuff, you got that guy, Joel, I can't remember his surname. But
the evangelical healing man.
Yeah, he was the one that basically, when it was one of the floods in Texas, and he shut his doors and he had this big, super mega church and was just like, nah, sorry, you guys aren't allowed in here. And, you know, it's just...
Yeah, fuck that shit. Like, I think there's such a difference between modern and recent religion to the history of music, because I feel like intuitively, if you were discovering music for the first time as a human being, you were like sitting around in a cave with your cave person friends, and then you will start singing, that's gonna feel religious. It's gonna feel like other than yourself and from another place and received. And like ancient Greek, ancient in general systems of thinking about music was that it was received from gods. The same with art. And then after that, you had like not that I like religious institutions, but if you think of like the Renaissance, for example, the churches and in the Middle East, like religious institutions sponsored artists and they sponsored musicians. And the reason that we have understanding of harmonics in Western society is because of church choral music, of like placement as well. Like venues developed because people realized that if you put people in a different places in a church, you could create different kinds of sounds. And like the idea of bass and treble and all these things were because church choirs, they realized if you arrange them separately, it sounds better as opposed to if you mix them together. Like all our understanding of music actually comes from discoveries through religion. And again, like I'm not being like, you guys should be religious. I'm just saying it's important. And I think dismissing it is just for the sake of like appearing dangerous is a bit silly. I think you're like missing out on a lot of what you could really be learning from and engaging with and enjoying.
Yeah. No, 100%. And, you know, what you've just said there is kind of just really made me think. I think the reason why at Roban Festival, for example, my favorite stage is the one that's in like the stained glass kind of like church.
Yeah.
And it's actually got really good acoustics as well, so it's cool. But then unfortunately they don't use that venue anymore. They had to sell it off, which was a shame.
Yeah, it's a shame.
But no, yeah, it's that's such a valid point.
Thank you. That's good to be heard. Yeah, I was going to say as well, I looked into where some of the, like, this album makes really good use of sampling, which is something I very rarely say, because I usually hate samples, and as you said, it's used really well too. Like, the women chanting is actually from a town called Budhanath in Nepal, and then you've got monks chanting at Ranka Monastery, which weirdly has a 4-star review on Google. I don't know why. It's a Buddhist temple between Nepal, Bhutan, and it's technically in India. It's just like a little bit poking up between the two in the Himalayas. It's like a really cool place on the map. And then the kingdom. So there was something. There's references to the kingdom of Dargay as well, which was a kingdom in Kham in the 15th to 19th century. It was a center of industry and religion politics. So it's interesting that they're referencing all these parts of the Himalayas. And like talking about Hinduism and all this kind of really interesting cultural like mashing together. It's not just like a single country. They're looking at like a huge area and connecting all the cultures together, and it sounds really cool. So yeah, these guys are awesome. I really like that about them. They're not appropriating.
See, that's cool because you said Durgay, which I'm presuming is how you pronounce the second last track.
I think so.
On
yeah.
The album. Because I just
it's Durga, also the god, right?
Well, see, I couldn't find anything. I just presumed it might just be in a different spelling of the word dirge.
Ah, no. So there's also Durga, who's this Sikh Hindu god. She's like, I think she's a destruction goddess. Hang on, and there's like, it's again like Hindu. Let me see if I can bring her up because she's fucking cool. Yeah, she's also known as Devi and Shakti. And she was created for slaying the buffalo demon Mahisara by Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. So, yeah, she's just cool. I like her.
I remember doing Diwali at school. Did you do Diwali in primary school?
We did in my infant, yeah.
Yeah. And that shit was wild. Like, I loved it.
Oh, it's so trippy.
I just felt like, wow, this is some cool, like, that was like the only play in school I ever enjoyed being a part of, because we done Oliver Twist. I think we've done the Pied Piper, which is always a bit sinister, especially when it's a primary school doing it. And then we did Diwali, I think, for the first 3 years, like years 1, 2, and 3. I think we've done like a yearly celebration play of it, and it was just super cool. I loved it. I just love like the lore of it.
I remember, oh god, in my primary school we did this like play, and it was supposed to be like Christmas around the world. And thinking back on it, it's like awful because they like dressed us up in saris. And we were like, they obviously chose me because I was like vaguely brown.
You're the closest to that region,
right?
Yeah.
There was like one Indian guy, and his mum came and like dressed like a bunch of us, and like 3 white girls in saris. And we came on, and I think they were putting on like Indian accents.
Oh,
it was so cringy. It was so racist. Like, oh yeah, of course they celebrate Christmas in India because it's so superior to everything else. It's like, whoa, we don't care if it's Christmas, bro.
Did you cover how they celebrate Christmas in Japan?
No, I don't think so.
We go to KFC.
I wish we did so I could have some KFC.
But they think that Christmas being a Western holiday, the embodiment of Western society is KFC. So on Christmas Day, they all go out and have some fried chicken.
Wow. I mean, it's true.
Yeah.
Like, it is probably one of the most iconic representations of current Western society is the fried chicken.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Man, I need to up my Christmas game.
Who would have thought we would have got onto fried chicken so quickly?
Well, it's only ever a matter of time. I will also, one last thing about Durga that I find cool is that she always rides a lion, usually, always. And she has either 8 or 10 arms, each one with a cool weapon from one of the gods.
Ah, that's cool.
Which is like so cool. I love that she has loads of weapons, and they're for her to buffle the demon buffalo, which is
it's like Goro
cool.
from Mortal Kombat.
Yes, I don't know, but yes. Yeah,
But
so yeah, Durga.
I just want to say as well, I want to give a special shout out to the drums on this album because I think the drums were absolutely phenomenal. So I've got Evan McGregor as a drummer on this release. And just a lot of cool techniques, like I said, a lot of jazz influence on one of the tracks, Ascension. It sounds like he's using a lot of ghost notes, which is where you hit like the rim of the drum, just to give it that kind of like kind of loungy kind of sound, for lack of a better term. But just some really cool shit going on, like a lot of fills. It's just interwoven with the bass so well, and like it's always you know it takes a lot of talent to do it when it doesn't sound like a mess. When you know it should really sound like a mess, because there's quite a lot going on musically, but they managed to keep it like quite tightly wrapped.
They're using some like really complex, like in a Western way, time signature, but like rhythmic cycles if you're thinking about it non-Western wise, and it's really hard to carry that off with so much instrumentation at the same time, and with so many transitions and without vocals, because like I don't know, it depends who you anchor to when you're playing, but sometimes without a vocalist it can be even harder, because you're like, oh, I'm at this point of the song, I'm at that point of the song, but you can like drift off and be like, where am I?
Yeah. But it's just totally, there's some really, it's some certain tracks reminded me of some quite strange comparisons. Like Rebirth was quite a jazz heavy track, and there's a part of it, there's a bit of it that had like this almost tremolo pick style death metal section, but there was a part of it that was like really, it sounded like really super heavy jazz, similar to you ever listen to Norway Shining?
Yeah.
So not the weird Swedish Shining.
Fuck those guys.
The black jazz guys.
No.
And then there's the song Durga, which I was going to pronounce Dirge before you.
I mean, I could be pronouncing it wrong. Just because I'm brown doesn't mean I know all the words.
But that's a really cool track. Opens with like a super, like quite heavy proggy section.
Yeah.
And there's parts of it that remind me of this quite obscure, I think they're a French, like hardcore kind of like grindy band called Nostromo.
Oh.
Named after the ship in the Alien franchise.
Oh, that's so cool.
And they also do some really cool like little production tricks and different tones and dynamics on the guitar that remind me of that album, funnily enough, which is strange because it doesn't sound alike at all. But there's a few times, just the tone of the instruments at times really remind me of a few tracks off that album. I have to let you guys listen to it at some point, because I think I've got a rip of it on my computer. Like, it's not on Spotify, but it was a cool album.
That's really awesome. I love that. I was a little bit trepidatious about submitting like an instrumental, because it is kind of difficult sometimes to review instrumental albums, but there is just so much going on in this that I think it's like, I really love this. I think I listened to this when we were recording our first album, and I remember Shem really wanted to call a track Ascension, and I'm really fucky about. Shem's like, no, stop.
I didn't.
Yes, you did.
You were going to call it Ascension, then you had
No,
no idea.
Ascension was the note that I wrote about the song. It's like, because what I do when I'm writing is I never name a song until everything's finished.
Yeah.
Because like the song changes as you write it, so I'll put a placeholder name. But like Shem saw the placeholder name and he was like, no, it could only be Ascension, and I was like, no, I don't want it to be. And like, we had this like 6-month long argument where I'd be like, Shem, there are like 50 songs called Ascension. And I remember I like found this album and I was like, look, there's a song right here that's also called Ascension. It's a good name. I really like the name. It works really well on this album. Obviously it like fits in the concept, but I feel like it eventually became Asher Banipal's request, which I think is more suited to our style.
I don't know how much I like being thrown under the bus.
You're not being thrown under the bus. How is that being thrown under the bus? Am I shaming you? I don't mean to shame. I just think it's fun. I just think it's funny. Ascension. Anyway.
There's a good band called Ascension, actually.
That I believe, I know a lot about music relating to the word Ascension now because of that one debate that raged within the band. But yeah, like I think they fully deserve to have that song called Ascension because it works really well and it's a beautiful song.
It's actually just a really easy album to listen to, which I think is one of the things you remarked when we were discussing about reviewing it. I'd never heard of this group before, so I always love going in blind with these sort of things. But yeah, it wasn't overly long either. Like sometimes I feel like it could be a bit overindulgent at times. Albums of that nature, I'm talking more instrumental albums. But no, I think it was the perfect length. I think just the flow of the tracks, like I said, it really does kind of rise and fall. And I think, it lends perfectly to the subject material. It's kind of the titles of the tracks are alluding to. Obviously, can't see the lyrics because there's no lyrics. But yeah, no, it's really cool. Really enjoyed it. Just super easy to listen to and kind of jam to. Strange, given how kind of crazy the album is, because it is quite like all over the place at times, but in the best possible way.
It's a peaceful listen. I used to listen to this and walk to work. I'd have like a half-hour walk and I'd blast this and I'd just like stomp my way. It's a really good walking album.
Yeah, what was did I ever have a walking album? I can't think of. I'll think of it for next time.
I have like 3 go-tos. One of them is this. One is Ablation by Floor, which is a fantastic album. Have you heard
No.
it? Oh my god, we should review it.
Yeah,
It's
I've never
such a
heard
good album. Oh my gosh. And the other one I will have forgotten. I like Car Bomb as well. They're really good for walking. Oh my god, no. Floor and like one of my favorite bands.
That's FLOOR, not the new metal band FLAW.
Yeah, I'm not really a
Cool.
new metal kind of guy. It would be hard pressed to find me listening to anything apart from System of a Down in that genre. I can't remember the other one, but Floor is a good album as well. Yeah.
Car Bomb's a good shout, to be fair.
They're really good.
They're so good live.
Oh,
I saw
wish
them
I could
with
see them.
Gojira and I think it was Code Orange.
Nice.
So that was quite a brutal gig. It was good.
God, I'm envious. Shall we move on to Helloween, Keeper of the Seven Keys, Part 2?
let's.
Yeah, I put this in the wrong order by accident. I cannot believe this was released in 1988.
Oh, really?
This was a full-on Floyd suggestion, and I love it. I'm grateful for it because I've always needed to they're one of those bands that I knew I'd listen to because I like Blind Guardians. I was like, of course I'll like Helloween. I'm pretty sure they've played together, right? And have they shared members? Is Kiska, has he worked with?
Yeah, I think Hansi Kirsch is quite close with like Michael Kisker and stuff, and they've both been involved in Tobias Sammet's project Avantasia.
Okay, that's it.
There's a guy from Edguy he's got his super group, and he's always got like Kisker guesting on tracks and Hansi Kirsch on the newest Avantasia album as well. Avantasia's a lot cheesier than Helloween, because the great thing about Helloween, especially these earlier albums as well, there's a healthy dose of like thrash and speed metal still in it, so it's got like it doesn't have as much pomp as some of the newer power metal bands, which is a bit more kind of overly clinical and fuck it, I'll just say it, a bit too much like Dragon Force. Like, why not?
Shots fired. Yeah,
Nothing wrong with that, but it's just not for me.
I don't like it when it's overly cheesy. It's a little bit too much for me.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, when you want to buy some clothing and you've got like the normal Zara coat, then you've got like the slightly edgy coat, and then you've got the full-on Camden dripping with like bondage stuff and chains, which it has its all like people like what they like, but for me I'm in the middle coat. I'm in the middle.
Yeah.
I don't like it too cheesy.
All I could think about there was I remember one time Amy had it was a shirt she bought. I'm pretty sure it was in Camden as well, and it was no, I'm talking absolute bullshit. She bought this in Japan. One of the best things about Japan is you go there and you find shirts with like with English on it, because oftentimes it will be like
wrong.
Yeah, just really strange sentences.
I love that.
So one of them was, "You called me hippie." I said, "Fuck off."
I
was just like, I was like, that's so good.
That happened to Shem at Duna Jam.
No.
We were watching a band. They're awesome. They actually turned out to be really lovely guys, but we hadn't met them at this point. And there was Insanity Alert. There was like 40, like 100 of us, I guess, on a beach, and like Insanity Alert come on, and like they're halfway through the set, they just stop, point at Shem and go, "Look, there's a hippie in an enslaved shirt." Oh, that's it, Entombed. And Shem's just sitting there like, "Why me?
Yeah.
Why me?" But he was just minding his own business. He wasn't even.
Everybody laughed at the hippie in the Entombed shirt.
Literally, that's what they did. They just all pointed at Shem and laughed. Oh, bad.
But it's like an Entombed shirt is so common, right? Why pick up on the Entombed shirt? Like, it's just, I feel like I always see at least one like left-hand path shirt at a gig.
It's a nice shirt. I like it. I steal it all the time. But they turned out to be really lovely guys. They're just total like trolls in a good way.
They like the party thrash sort of bands.
They're party thrash, yeah. It was totally unexpected because you don't know who's going to play.
Yeah.
So we thought it was going to be some like really arty, like thought out thing, and these like thrash guys turn up and like they just have this like they look thrash, like they just you could tell they drink loads of alcohol, and like this guy like comes up and he's got all his signs and like they were really funny. I like them a lot.
I think they are either playing or have played Damnation before. So I remember seeing them on the bill.
Wow, that's cool.
Oh,
they're from Innsbruck. Everyone is always asking us if we were from Innsbruck. It's really strange. What
the fuck is Innsbruck?
Loads of people from
Germany.
Innsbruck.
Oh.
I thought it was Austria. Is it Germany? What was Austria?
Germany, it's close to Austria.
Okay, well, there you go. I've learned something today.
My drummer in my old band was from Innsbruck, so I stayed there for a while.
It sounds like a level in a video game where everything is like secretly a zombie, you know?
Yeah, the only place I've been in Germany, and is I want to preface this not because of the history of the place, is Nuremberg.
I knew you were going to say something like that.
It's for work, but it's there's a big trade show there. But I just always want to go explore it a bit more because and then
nice.
we can segue back into Helloween here because they're a German band.
They are indeed.
They're from Hamburg.
The segue comes out.
We'll get you an actual segue one day. You could like segue into frame.
This is the thing that I've always wondered because you don't say segue, is it? Because it's Segue, right? That's
Sedgway? No, Segway.
that's the word, right?
It's Segway. It is Segway. That's why the Segway's called.
But
What?
I thought the word is actually Segue. But I thought people were mispronouncing it as Segway so much that I just started saying Segway as well.
Maybe it's the American pronunciation. Oh, here we go. Google's going to get it right. Yeah, Segway.
Segway, okay. There you go.
Now
okay,
that
cool.
the word has lost all meaning.
I know.
Because we said it so much.
But no, and do you know what? Helloween, like Blind Guardian, who's already mentioned, just one of those bands who I think are kind of... they kind of transcend the confines of like the power metal genre a bit. I feel like a lot of people can get into Helloween and their kind of back catalogue. I personally prefer, because this is a 2-part kind of album. You've got Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 1, and then there's Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 2. I think the reason why I wanted to do this one was I think, in my humble opinion, this has probably got some of the most catchiest power metal songs and riffs I've ever heard in my life. Like, it's got the massive hit "I Want Out," which is a world-renowned, recognized hit and just a major international metal song. And it's just, I just love it. And I think Kiska is just one of the best vocalists of all time. He's just got such a good like kind of vibrato to his voice, and his falsettos are amazing. And it's just over the top. Like it's unnecessary a lot of the time. But it just fits so well. And the thing is, like you were talking earlier about power metal being kind of like cheesy and stuff. And don't get me wrong, this album is cheesy as fuck. Like I don't know if you read
In a nice way.
yeah, in a kind of a wholesome sort of way. I don't know if you read the lyrics to like Dr. Steen, which is about like him, like Frankenstein. Oh, is it Frankenstein or Steen?
Stein. It's Frankenstein. But I
So
guess if
they
you're
say
German,
Dr.
maybe
Steen.
it's Frankenstein.
Maybe it's
in
pronounced Steen.
Stein. Frankenstein.
I'm gonna say Frankenstein.
You sound like very Schwarzenegger-y. Stein.
But it's about him like cloning members, cloning people to form like the ultimate rock band and like and multiple assistants.
So cheesy.
And stuff, and it's just shit like that. And there's the track Rise and Fall, which has a lyric where I can't remember what they're talking about, but the line is that he couldn't get it up, and it's got like a sad whistle sound, just shit like that. But I mean, they were super young when they recorded this.
Oh my
but
God.
like it's interesting because like the first Helloween album, Walls of Jericho, which is funny enough, it's where the wrestler Chris Jericho got his name from.
I was
Yeah.
literally thinking of Chris Jericho when you said that.
Yeah, so
That's crazy.
he legit got his name from the Walls of Jericho album.
Wow.
And I'm presuming the hardcore band Walls of Jericho also took their name from.
I was literally thinking of them too when you said that too. Oh.
But yeah, that album is like a lot more kind of like aggressive and kind of thrashy, and like it's a bit more of its time. There was a lot of releases like that, but then with the release of Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 1 and then Part 2, where I think they kind of fully fledged the sound, it's kind of one of those early albums that incorporate the more sillier aspects of metal, but do it in the way that's still it's serious. Like the guitar riffs are pretty good. There's some great dual lead work throughout the album. The title track Keeper of the Seven Keys is like one of the most epic power metal songs ever written. Like it's super long. It starts with a great acoustic passage. There's so many transitions and riffs, and the lyrical subject matter of that track is I think it's a loose like sci-fi story about someone who's got the keys to hell or something, and he's got to destroy them to defeat the devil and stuff. But like there's like a different riff when they talk about each different key.
Oh, so clever.
So it's just like there's so many cool transitions and stuff happening on this album. I just love it. And it's funny, I was saying the other week that every time I talk about something that I like a lot, I always get so flustered. So I'm just like, there's just so much shit I want to say. It's like when we're talking about the Afterbirth album.
Yeah.
But no, like I just totally love this, and I'd love to hear more what you've got to say about this album.
I really enjoyed it. I loved reading about like kind of the history of the band, because I didn't know that Helloween had been around for so long. I didn't know they were bigger in the past than they are now as well. And yeah, like the album, when I didn't think it was going to be so fast. I remember like I put it on and it started playing and I was like, whoa, this is super fast. And then it just kept being fast. It's just like so hyper. I loved it.
Yeah.
It was like really, a kind of, I'm not comparing the actual sound, but it reminds me of kind of like K-pop at times, if that makes sense. I don't know why.
See what you're getting
Because it's
at,
kind
yeah,
of like
just the
hyper.
high energy.
Yeah, it's like loads of energy there. And I really like that. It also, weirdly, that energy reminds me of Cryptic Shift's energy in Visitations from Enceladus.
Okay.
Because that's also the same kind of super upbeat and like really complex. And there's like so much going on. I actually really like that. I don't listen to much music that's like that. Usually what I listen to is like way more chill and heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff in like the major key in here and stuff. There's a lot of happy sounding stuff. One thing they're really good at doing as a band is really well placed kind of like samples and synths and little production tricks. Like, you know, when there's a really super heavy, kind of like more aggressive part, they'll put a lot of reverb and delay on the guitar solos just to kind of hammer it home. And they'll be like, just really, like in the title track, Keeper of the Seven Keys, there's one part where there's like a quieter acoustic period. And there's just one really loud synth part that just punctuates it. And then that's the only real synth part you hear on the entire track. And just little bits and like that. They don't overuse it like a lot of bands. Like, because the thing is, when I think of like bad synths, and I don't know why I'm calling out loads of bands today, but you know, like a band like Dimmu Borgir, for example, or where it's just like it could be a bit too cheesy and overbearing at times.
Yeah.
It's got its place, and I'm not saying they're a bad band by any stretch of the imagination.
Cradle are totally guilty of using bad synths.
Yeah, I was going to mention Crypt as well. But you know what I mean? It's like, and I know you're a fervent sort of anti-synth person.
I'm anti-bad synth.
Anti-bad synth.
I'm pro-good synth. I'm a connoisseur of synth.
But no, there's some cool shit. And like, yeah, what you were touching a little bit about like the history of the band is they've had a bit of a resurgence recently because what they do now, they've got this thing called like Pumpkins United where they tour with the current vocalist because Kiska left the band. And then they had their other vocalist, Andy Darris, come in, but he also performs with them live. And they've just released an album this year, which I haven't actually listened to. I haven't got around to it. But it has both vocalists on the album.
Cool.
So when they do, I went to watch them in Brixton Academy a few years back, and it was a great show because they cycle through.
I remember they played. Was it with Blind Guardian?
It was. Do you know what?
It was them and Avantasia.
There wasn't any other bands. It was a solo show at the Brixton Academy, I think.
But
the one I watched anyway.
I remember hearing about you going because I think it was when we were Yeah, because
it was the funny thing was it was the day after Roadburn. So I'd just come back from this super serious, like fucking, like, you know, listen to that super hipster-ish, you know, like really, like, you know, cool music. And I was like, yeah, I'm watching Helloween as soon as I get back. But it was, he put on such a good show. Like, honestly, they're so tight musically, and Kiska's voice has stood up. Like, live, he is one of the best vocalists as well. Clean vocalists. But yeah, it's so cool because obviously they got both members of both eras of the band and they perform material throughout the entire catalogue. Like, they don't leave anything out. It was like over 2 hour set. So it was a real spectacle to watch live. It was a great show.
That is awesome. Yeah, I think I imagine them to be more like Blind Guardian because I haven't listened to very much of this kind of metal or music in general because I have tended to avoid it because of what you're saying about the synth. Like when I think of bad synth, I think of, no offense, some Nightwish stuff that I listened to in the early 2000s I never went back to again. I'm sure like they vocally are amazing and musically they're really impressive, but I tend to just have like a reaction to some synth. So I tend to like avoid some, but now like I'm slowly opening up, and I really love the fact that there's so many. Floyd isn't happy.
I've got damaged vocal cords, by the way. I'm not infectious currently.
We're all good. We're a bubble. And yeah, basically, that sounds really weird to say out loud. Excuse me. Shem just took the piss out of my voice. We are a bubble. How about that? Yes, I like the fantasy references in this genre in particular. There's like so much fantasy. I am personally having a fantasy resurgence. Like I've always been hard into it, but this year I've just like I've read The Wheel of Time. I'm reading like 5 different fantasy series right now. I love it so much. And this music is like the perfect kind of.
You say you read Dune this year, or you have read Dune already?
Oh, I've read Dune many times.
No, nice.
I've read Dune like first when I was a teenager, and Dune is coming out this year. I need to reread Dune soon. But I read Wheel of Time, which is like tens of thousands of pages. Well, yeah. I think it's like almost 1,000 pages per book, and there's 15 books. So it's probably like over 10,000 pages.
Has there ever been any interest in a Wheel of Time sort of TV show or movie?
It's coming out like next month.
No way.
I am so excited. I'm
wild.
so excited
cool.
for it. I'm going to lose my mind when it comes out, and the casting looks really good as well.
Apparently the June casting is really good, I've heard, from people who are somewhat fans. Or
I don't like Timothée Chalamet.
who's that again?
Some guy.
I know the name.
He's just
Some
he's
dude.
got some young face man. He's just like it's just not the same as I know it's considered one of the worst films ever, but I love the David Lynch film. I love it. I think Jason Momoa is a very good casting for Duncan Idaho. They should have got Patrick Stewart back, in my opinion. But
Who's Dave Bautista playing again?
is he Gurney? I think he's Gurney.
He's one of the Harkonnens.
Oh, is he? Oh, actually, that's pretty good. And Skarsgård as one of the Harkonnens is a very good casting.
Which Skarsgård? Is it
The old one.
Oh, Stellan.
Yeah. I mean, the original Harkonnen guy was fucking gross to look at in like the best, because they are gross in the best way. And Sting was like in it too, wearing like the weird codpiece. It's such a good.
Sting is in the
He's
Singer Sting.
he's in the David Lynch movie.
No.
Like, it's so good. Have you not
I've not
seen
seen
it?
it. No.
Oh, it's
Well, I
such
heard
a
it
good
was
film.
shit, so I've not watched it.
It's good. It's really good.
Check it
Honestly, like it's shit if you're like, I only watch Tarkovsky, but like Tarkovsky's great too. But like it's fine. I like
I
it.
want to read the book first, though. That's the thing. I'm like that. I like to read. I like to know about the source material before I watch a film.
There are many books. There's more than one.
Yeah.
The Lynch film is just the first book. The books are wild. I was literally talking to Luke about them, who has generally like no interest in this kind of thing, and his mind was so blown. This is a picture of Sting and his codpiece. It's such a good film.
So good.
I love that film so much.
Looks like he's just finished one of his 4-hour Kundalini yoga sessions there.
He was definitely doing some Kundalini on that set, man. It's such a great film. The sandworms are fucking epic as well. Like, I don't know how I feel about the new ones that look kind of butt-holy, but hopefully they make them like cool and scary. I don't know. Yeah.
That's cool. I'm quite looking forward to it. I'll probably watch it in the cinema, to be fair.
I probably won't.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I like the fantasy connection with music. Blind Guardian have like a Wheel of Time song. They also have a Michael Moorcock song. So I'm feeling it from Helloween as well. They had some like, I was like wondering if they had like March of Time and Keeper of Seven Keys. It feels like it's a reference.
There's a few Lord of the Rings references. They've got an album called Master of the Rings.
Nice.
And so it's they're strongly into it as well. It just seems it's super big in Germany. It really is. Fantasy is huge there. And I'm just talking from a professional perspective as well, because I just know how much business we have in Germany.
I didn't know that.
Oh, it's unreal.
That's
it's
so interesting.
crazy. Makes so much more money in Germany than we do in the UK, apparently.
Oh, so the UK is not as fantastically inclined.
No, in any form. Like that.
Especially when it comes to food availability and petrol.
Yeah, no.
On that note.
But no, it's just, you know what? It's one thing I do want to say quickly is a quick shout out and a rest in peace to the drummer of this album, who unfortunately died in 1995. They actually, I can't remember which track it was, but there's a few tributes to him. And the drumming on this album is actually really good as well. It's always, and I love the drum production on the album as well, because like one of the things that puts me off a lot of modern music is how clicky drums sound. And like, you know, there's a few bands where it works, like, you know, Anal Nathrak are a band who I think have what I would say is quite mechanical sounding drums, where they just sound a bit triggered and clicky, but I think it works for them because they've got that industrial sort of edge. But there's most other bands that I just hate it. I just hate the clicky, weak sounding drums. And, you know, that's the great thing about the 80s and the early 90s is, you know, a lot of drum production had that stadium sound. Like there were fans of bands like, you know, the Queen influence on Helloween. Like,
I love Queen so much.
Yeah, Queen are great. And like, you know, and the production on some Queen albums are just unreal. And, you know, and these guys, you know, those would be the sort of bands these guys would have been fan of. They would have been fans of, you know, the early, like, godfathers of heavy metal, whether it be the Judas Priests and the Queen. So you can't downplay how much of an influence Queen are on so many bands. I remember seeing an interview with Bobby from Overkill, and he actually went and saw them live in their original incarnation.
Oh my God, so jealous.
It was, I think it was like a Metal Injection video. It was like, what's the first gig you ever went to? And it was like Queen doing the, is it A Night at the Opera? Was that their thing
so,
they did?
Yeah.
And he saw it live and said it was young at the time. It was just unreal.
I'm so inspired by Queen. I love them so much. They're incredible. Yeah. And like the fact that He wrote a song about his cat called Delilah, which is my favorite Queen song.
Oh.
It's just so cute. He literally meow. It's so cute. Anyway, back to Helloween from meowing like a cat. I found it interesting. So I was reading about like kind of what was going on at the time. The fact that Kiska was 18 when he joined.
Oh, super young.
That is insane.
Yeah.
That will really blow your mind because at the time they were getting huge as well.
Yeah.
Being that age and then experiencing that like in any realm of professionalism, especially entertainment, that must be so wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because I mean, they really did have quite a lot of success quite early on, I think, and then they had their mid period and then a bit of a resurgence later on. But yeah, and you could tell he's a kid. I mean, just look at some of the lyrics, and this is not a knock because at the end of the day, English isn't their first language, but you could tell reading some of the lyrics that this is the lyrics of a guy that's barely become an adult. But it's astonishing, just his vocal prowess. For me personally, he's right up there with like Rob Halford in terms of just the way he can hit those higher registers.
It's so impressive vocally.
Yeah.
Absolutely mind-blowing. Super, super mind-blowing. And it's, it's not, I like that it's not traditionally masculine as well. I think that's really interesting. For those people who are like, female fronted is a genre, like blah, blah, blah. Like it's not a genre. Like the Kiska, if you showed this to someone who had no idea if like the singer was male or female, they probably wouldn't necessarily be able to tell you. There's loads of bands like that. Mars Volta, for example.
Yeah.
Legit thought that was a woman for like 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never really listened to Mars Volta.
They're really good.
Yeah.
They're really, really good. I like them a lot. I recently got into them. Yeah.
It's a good point because I think you could kind of apply that musically to the album as well because the first album was predominantly, a lot of the guitar work was written by Kai Hansen, who was also the vocalist on the first album before they employed the talented vocal cords of Kiska. And Michael, I mean, I suppose in German it'd be pronounced Weikath because that's how they pronounce the W's. He took over the guitar writing duties on this particular album.
I saw, yeah.
So it has that more of a melodic tinge to it. So I think there's more. It's got a lot of pop sensibilities to it, and I mean that in the best possible way.
Yeah.
Pop music when it was pop music and not some strange whatever the hell it is now. I sound like such a boomer, such a low person. I don't know, whatever those kids are listening to these days. I generally don't know what the fuck is in the charts these days. Like I couldn't tell you.
Lil Nas X has 3 songs in the charts right now.
Oh shit, he's doing well for himself.
I legit love the album he released.
Do you listen to it?
Really good.
Is it good?
It's so good. Sorry to derail Helloween, but it's actually really good, and I love all the music videos for it.
Yeah, that was quite cool. The music video done where he was like giving them Satan a lap dance and stuff. And, yeah.
He can pole dance better than I ever will. Not that I even pole dance, so I mean, not particularly impressive, but you know what I mean. Yeah. Yeah, and I love the prison video where like he just has a room full of like butt naked dancers who are all men. That's just so much more edgy than any black metal could ever be.
Yeah.
Like I would love to. I mean, I think Nurgle might try something like that soon though. Knowing him, he's probably like very inspired by that.
Yeah, it's I decided not to follow him on Instagram.
Me too. I recently unfollowed him too.
I just I don't know, just
Did you see who was it? Was it Nagaroth? Whatever he's called. He was just
black
like
metal Ist Krieg guy.
Yeah, he was just like, I just can't stand that behemoth guy. I don't know if it's anyone else. It's just me. Everyone else was just like, yeah, sure.
I mean, this is the same guy that. Well, give me a second. I'll look it up.
Wasn't he the guy that was like offering to play Steelfest? Yeah, that guy's so funny.
Hold on a second.
He's so pathetic.
There's a track on the album Black Metal Ist Krieg. It's got the best title ever.
What is it called?
Just give me a second.
Is it called I'm Scared of Non-Masculine Men?
Oh, if you haven't heard this before, get ready for this. The song's called The Day Burzum Killed Mayhem.
Stupid, oh my god.
And there's another song, Eric, May You Rape the Angels.
Fucking hell.
And Possessed by Black Fucking Metal.
Wow. Well, this guy really likes being a nerd.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's enough about Nagaroth. Don't know how we got to Nagaroth from Helloween. But...
There you go. From Little Nas X to Nagaroth too. Oh, that was a beautiful journey through time and space. Helloween. This album went gold in Germany, which is really impressive. I like that about Germany. They have good taste in music. Yeah,
because they all still have mullets. Not all of them. That's a generalization. But every time I've been in Germany, I see
so many mullets.
The mullet to non-mullet ratio is much higher
Yeah.
in Germany than it is anywhere else I've been.
And right now, mullets are super fashionable.
They are.
Yeah, they actually kind of work. I always thought they were horrible, and then like all these cute girls started getting mullets, and now I'm like, wow, this actually does work. But I think it's more of a girl thing.
I think mullets work when they're paired with the right kind of dress sense.
Definitely.
And
You
this
can't
is
write
rich
Polo.
coming from me that has no dress sense, and no
not
hair
true.
either. But like, you know, like when you see pictures of people that had mullets in the 80s, and they would have a mullet but be wearing like business attire or like dress shirts and stuff. Like, what the fuck? Like, that is not the hairstyle that goes with that attire. Like, it just doesn't gel at all.
It's a commitment. You have to always be wearing a leather jacket. Like, you can't wear like a polo neck.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, maybe like a summer shirt or like a Hawaiian shirt kind of goes with it a bit, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll never know. I'll never get the chance to do it. I could do a skullet if I wanted.
You could do a skullet.
Yeah,
I
I'm
think
not
Devin
going to.
Townsend immortalized the skullet.
Yeah, I mean, well, the thing is, once he done it and kind of perfected it with his kind of dread skullet, I mean, there's no one else can really.
He's kind of done it. He's been there, like, he's completed that level. No one else can really.
The guy from Blood Incantation's getting there a bit.
Really?
He's got a bit of a skullet thing going on, yeah.
Skullet.
Which is funny because he does look a bit like an alien. That's why.
Does he actually?
Yeah.
I've never looked at him. I might Google this.
In a cool way. I'm not saying he's a weird looking guy. It's Paul, I think his name is.
Incantation. Paul. No, the thing is cool. Oh, wow, yeah, he's got...
Oh, it's got him from one bolden person to another, you know what I mean?
He's got that, like, alien bone structure. Yeah, I see what you mean. In a cool way. Oh, that bolt thrower shirt. I've got that bolt thrower shirt. I was like, that's a sick shirt. Wait, I've got it. That's awesome.
It works. It's a cool look. It works on people. It's like Kronos. Like, no one's going to tell Kronos that his hair's shit, are they? I mean...
Sorry, I don't know why, but you made me think of what's his face, the nose goblin man.
Mortis.
You made me think of Mortis and someone telling him his nose looks.
Oh, Mortis, your nose is shit, mate.
It's like flick him on the nose.
I think I might have made this up because it's funny in my head, but I'm pretty sure he played a festival once and it was super hot and his nose melted off.
Yeah, I've heard this as well.
I think that did actually happen.
I was on a comment thread and someone said they saw him in Wales and his nose fell off like one song into the set.
Oh, that's amazing.
That's so funny.
He was on an Emperor album as well.
Oh, wow.
One of the early ones.
Do you think he wears his nose in the studio? It makes you like far away from the mic.
Maybe it's... Oh, do you know what else this is reminding me of? Nardwuar, right?
I love Nardwuar.
For anyone that doesn't know, he's a Canadian
Human
interviewer,
serviette.
the Human Serviette. And he does the greatest interviews because he deep dives his research like no one else.
Yeah.
And he's very upfront and he could be quite abrasive at times in the most endearing way possible. But it's funny, every time I see him interviewing metal people, it never goes well.
So his Rollins interview is the most awkward interview I've ever seen. Yeah.
But the one with Slipknot's really funny because I think he's interviewing Clown and Chris Fenn, who's the guy with the long nose. And there's one moment in the song where Clown's like really animated and trying really hard to maintain some sort of like image, and he puts his hand up and flicks his nose by accident. And all the comments are just like time stamping the moment where he flicks his nose by accident. He's just standing there looking super serious while his nose is just wobbling.
That should be a gift.
But it's such a bad interview. His Cradle one didn't go down too well as well.
Oh no!
But I heard the Cradle one was poorly edited because apparently there's a longer version because they came across quite like kind of standoffish and a bit surly. But I do actually think he kind of struggles a bit more with the metal musicians. I think his wheelhouse is definitely freaking out rappers.
Yeah, it's so great.
I mean,
the
so
Pharrell
hilarious.
one where like I think he interviews Pharrell like 2 or 3 times. The first time like he interviews Pharrell is like so shocked he's speechless that Nardwuar knows
Yeah,
about
that's a
like
good
his
one.
primary school history and stuff.
Yeah.
And then like the second time Pharrell tries to surprise Nardwuar by like having interview questions for Nardwuar, and he won't answer any of the questions.
Yeah.
It's really great.
There's a great one with David Cross. I think his name's David Cross, the guy from Arrested Development.
Oh really?
Bald guy with the glasses.
Oh my god,
Tobias.
he's so funny.
Yeah, Tobias from Arrested Development. And like he heard a story that happened only like a week prior to the interview about him getting in trouble. Everyone's trying to like smuggle a dildo on the plane or something. And like he wasn't answering any questions.
Is this real life?
Yeah, this is real life.
Why would you smuggle a dildo on a plane? Surely you could just have it on the plane.
It was something like that. And like Nardwuar had heard of the story and he just spent like a good 5 minutes just saying, not answering any of the questions. Saying, no. How do you know that? Like that literally happened
Last
like
week.
a couple weeks ago. And like I've not mentioned it anywhere. Like how did you find that out?
That's amazing.
But yeah.
I'm going to watch that later.
Yeah, some good shit.
Damn.
Anyway, Helloween. But no, I mean, I think I've said everything I want to say about Helloween. What a fantastic album. And I think, just one of those classic power metal albums that still has a healthy amount of links to the past, like it's got that traditional, that Judas Priest, Merciful Fate style riffage in it, as well as, even talking to Venom earlier in Kronos, like Venom is such an influential band, I feel like, and I can hear so much of their work in so many kind of extreme metal bands. But
thank you so much for introducing me to this album. It's an absolute classic.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
10 out of 10. I'm going to definitely dive into more of their discography because they have 16 studio albums, which is crazy.
Yeah, they've got a great song. I can't remember the album, but the track's called Are You Metal? And it's a really cheesy track.
Is it spelled like with a letter R and the letter U, or is it?
I think so. Yeah, I think
That's awesome.
No, it's R is spelled correctly, but I think the U might be a U.
Oh, it should be
I might
a V.
be making this up in my head, but
it'd be more metal if it was a V.
Yeah, that would be cool. More true in it.
Yeah.
But I'll play you that track at some point. It's a really cheesy track, but I love it. It's great.
I would love that.
That's in the Andy Darris era.
Let's move on to Carcass, Torn Arteries, released in 2021. Let's congratulate Bill Steer for getting married as well.
Yeah.
He got married recently. That's our Nardwar scoop. They formed in 1986, and in 2021 they are still going, and they're still going strong as fuck.
I could say so much about this band. The first thing I really want to say is, I don't think they get nowhere near enough credit for how influential they are on so many different subgenres in the scene. Like, I could talk for ages about all the other albums. I'm going to try to keep it just about this recent album, which, by the way, is fucking excellent.
It's so fucking
it's a
sick.
Really good album.
Yes.
But you know what I mean? Like the first couple albums, Reek, Putrefaction, Symphonies of Sickness, that basically started the entire gore grind movement. Every gore grind band now still sounds like that era of Carcass. Then the death grind sound, like in Necroticism, which, like, you just listen to a band like Aborted, for example, like it's just total Carcass worship in the best possible way, because I love Aborted. And even bands like Berserker as well, so heavily influenced by Carcass. And then they basically started melodic death metal as well. And like what you were saying a bit before, like, like Michael Amott, kind of really helped jumpstart his career with Arch Enemy, another band really synonymous with that style of metal. And, Carcass are one of those bands where, you could listen to an album across loads of different subgenres within the scene, and you'd be like, oh, that's a Carcass riff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Much in the same way. The only other band I could think of you could kind of do that with is At the Gates.
Okay.
Where, like, and more in the metalcore scene, because
Yeah.
it had such an impact on the early, like, 2000s metalcore scene. And there's so many times you'd be like, oh, that's just an At the Gates Gothenburg riff right there. But no, I mean, Carcass, I would say, have an even wider appeal because it helped spawn so many different subgenres. I was saying that even in one of the newest Gojira tracks on their new album, it was the what's the track called? Fuck.
Video for...
Yeah. It's lost. I'm not even going to bother trying to remember it because I just spent 5 minutes sitting in silence.
We could do that.
But it'll come back to me. It's got the word thing in it. I know that. It was like their first single. Born for One Thing. There you go.
Wow.
There's a track in that. There's a riff in that, which is basically
Such a rip-off.
it's incarnated solvent abuse.
Oh,
It's
that's
like,
such a banger as well.
yeah, it's the chuggy riff in that, and it just sounds exactly the same, which is great because obviously now I mean, there's been so much music released in the scene. It's impossible to put a sequence of notes together that are not going to sound similar to one of the other 100,000, well, probably more than a million songs that have been recorded.
They are like the Shakespeares of grind.
No, they're really good.
Yeah.
They're just so much good material. I enjoy every album, and this album in particular, I think, is an incredibly worthy addition to their already stellar back catalogue.
Absolutely. I love Carcass. Thankfully, I discovered them as a teenager, and I'm so glad I did, because they are such a good teenager band when you're like kind of exploring the gorier side, and like I love the lyrics, man. Like they're always so interesting. I always say this whenever I talk about Carcass because it's like one of my kind of moments when I was growing up where I could like kind of fly my freak flag. And like I had this like Shakespeare course at uni, like my first year of uni, and this is like the only reason probably I vaguely went to uni. I paid 30 grand for this, so I had my moment where they were like, bring in some Shakespeare inspired poetry. So I brought in Corporeal Jigsaw
Quandary.
Quandary by Carcass, because they have like Hamlet references in it.
Yeah.
And I read it to like a room of 300 people.
That's so cool.
They got like 3 people to come out, and like there was some like really romantic stuff. It was like Romeo and Juliet stuff, and there was like some like, you know, like epic intense stuff. And I'm there like reading Carcass lyrics, and everyone's looking at me like, what the fuck?
That is so cool.
It's like what? It's like I can't remember that much, but it's like a doctor trying to like solve a murder by like piecing together bits of a dismembered body.
Amazing. Do you know that story is like? It's like a real life version of one of those green texts you read on Reddit, and it's like, and everyone stands up and claps at the end.
know.
That's like, it's totally one of those stories. But
No one clapped.
Yeah.
Everyone just looked at me in like shocked silence.
the fuck?
And then I had like, they were like, okay, could you relate that to Shakespeare? I was like, okay, here are the references, here's how. And I actually like tied everything together really well. And they just looked at me like I'd shit myself. And they were like shocked. They were like, how'd you do that then? Like, it was one of those moments. Yeah.
Yeah. God, what a great song as well.
Oh,
It's
so good.
So what's your take on this album in particular then?
Oh man, I love it. I feel like the Carcass guys, like their personalities are part of the music now. They're like ingrained in British culture, having appeared on like Red Dwarf, as well as what was it, something in the Smegheads. They played the Ohm song. The Ohm song is one of my favorite songs of all time. It's in one of my favorite Red Dwarf episodes as well, which is I think the one where Lister, I don't really want to like give it away, but it's the Ouroboros episode.
Yeah,
is that one? It's like a
Nice to see a Michael Caine impersonation is coming around. Ouroboros. Buried enough members of the Wayne family.
Secretly, I've been Michael Caine the whole time. I was just gonna like pull off my skin and Michael Caine would appear. I wish I was Michael Caine. I'd be like filthy rich. Anyway, I don't even know what I was saying. Yeah, I just love like they're kind of been like these funny kind of like cult figures as I grew up, and like I got to interview them many years ago. They played with Amonomarth.
Oh, that would have been the Defenders of the Faith in
It
2013, was it?
Yeah.
Amonomarth. Hell as well, right? Were there?
Maybe.
Andy Sneap's band, I think.
Maybe, I don't remember. I don't think I even watched that band. I just remember I just only went to interview Carcass.
Nice.
I had to interview Monomarth, and they were total dicks. I mean, the one guy I interviewed was a total dick. I'm sure they're lovely normally. They were probably just tired from being on
Johan
tour.
Haig seems like a nice guy. He's a singer of Amonomarth.
I don't think he was the singer.
He's like the really big guy with a beard.
They're all big with beards.
Like the drummer or guitarist.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it was like he had a beard and stuff, but
And
like
Doesn't narrow it down.
right, exactly.
He's probably not in the band anyway. They've changed members so many times. I don't
He
think
was so miserable, I wouldn't be surprised.
No.
Like, he did not look happy to be there. And everyone was just, like, not talking to each other, as far away from each other as possible in the room, just, like, on their phones, like, not interested that, there was anyone else there. But, yeah, with Carcass, I sat down with Bill and Jeff, and I had the most fun interview I've ever had.
Oh, nice.
And we were, like, joking about Star Wars, and Jeff is just, like, the ultimate dad joker. He's just so into, like, puns, as you can see from this album, which is full of puns,
Yeah, you
which
got
I love.
Eleanor Rigor Mortis.
Yeah.
So it's a play on Eleanor Rigby, I'm guessing.
I'm assuming
I've missed
too.
that one, the Beatles song, fellow Liverpudlians.
And then there's just like Flesh Ripping Sonic Torment Limited, and then Kelly's Meat Emporium. It's like, why'd you name it that? I love that. Like, you can't find the lyrics for anything except for, I think it's Under the Scalpel Blade. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the only one that the lyrics were listed on the Home of Metal Encyclopedia Metallum.
I did a lyrical analysis on that one, which
nice.
I may dig into later. Yeah, I just fucking love that. They were just really lovely. I couldn't publish the interview because I did it for another publication and some stuff happened.
What a shame.
It was such a good interview. And I was like, can I share it on my own thing? And they were like, no.
Yeah.
But it was a great interview and they were really nice. And like, they were just really lovely to me afterwards when they saw me again, like a year later, they remembered who I was, which is like, why would you? I'm just some like small person. So yeah, they were just really cool. So I'm always going to love Carcass because they were like actually nice when they could have just been like, fuck off, you know? And yeah, like I love the album musically. It's fucking incredible. It's like a development on their already insane musicianship and songwriting. It just continues to be interesting and riveting and you just can't stop listening to it. You don't tune out when you're listening to the whole album.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And it's always funny because I always feel like Jeff and Bill, they've kind of got a bit of a yin and yang sort of vibe
They
about
do,
them.
yeah.
But it works well together. One
Yeah.
of the funniest Jeff moments when I saw them, I think it would have been Bloodstock 2014 when they were special guests underneath Emperor, and some kid must have collapsed in the pit.
Oh,
And like, and Jeff was doing this typical kind of like sardonic, kind of like dry humor. It was just like, sorry guys, we had to stop the set because some cunts decided to knock himself out in the pit.
oh God.
and then like took the kid out, and he's just like, God, I'm gonna look like a real prick if he dies now, doesn't he? But they actually took the kid backstage and like it was all in good fun, they were just taking the piss, and the guy was all right. So
That's so sweet. I've been a part. Yeah, you know what I mean.
but that was great because obviously that wasn't too long after Surgical Steel dropped, and I think
Good album.
I love Surgical Steel, but what I love about this album is I feel like they're delving into some different territories where I felt like, as much as I love Surgical Steel, I felt like it was quite a safe album.
Yeah.
In the sense, I thought it was quite a pretty much a direct continuation of what they were exploring on Heartwork.
I felt that too, but Heartwork is one of my favorite albums, so I didn't mind.
Oh,
and there
yeah,
was
exactly,
so much
yeah.
pressure on them as well
Yeah.
to like have a good release because they left it so long between albums, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was sorry, Jesus Christ. Just cough want
We
to
just
escape
love
there.
them so
Getting
much.
emotional, yeah.
We can't even talk.
But it's it's like such a desperate attempt to get that sentence out before I had to cough. But no, it was. Now the thing with that album was, you're absolutely right. Like, I love Heartwork as well. It's an absolutely fantastic album, and then it's super influential as well. But I feel like what is super cool about this album is it's almost at times it sounds like a perfect amalgamation of styles they've helped develop throughout the years. Like, this has much more of a kind of a swan song, kind of like that southern swagger. There's a lot more kind of like death and roll style tracks, and like let the what's called quickly, The Devil Rides Out.
Oh, it's such a good film, by the way.
Oh, is it based on a film?
Oh, you've never seen it?
I had no idea.
What?
No.
Oh, it's so good.
Bro.
It's such a good film.
Such a sick film.
Yeah.
No idea.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah,
I'll have to watch it.
totally recommend it. Yeah. Anyone who hasn't seen it, go watch it. If you like metal, you'll like it.
Oh, no way.
As a good
Cool.
guy.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Well, that's a swerve ball.
Yeah, it's really fucking cool. Yeah.
Oh, but yeah, that track has like, you know what I mean? And the thing is, like, Bill Steer is he's vampiric is what he is.
Yeah, it's not
I mean,
aged
it's just
at
like
all.
he just
yeah.
does not age, and he could still churn out so many good riffs. And the thing is, like, that Surgical Steel had no good being as good as an album as it was with such a gap. And I think people forgetting that there's been an 8-year gap since Surgical Steel and this album. So, you could almost forgive them for doing an album that was even, say, a Surgical Steel Part 2, but I don't feel like they've really played it safe at all. I think there's some stuff on this album that I feel like it is kind of pushing the boat out for them a bit. One of them is the last track on the album, which is another great track, the Scythe's Remorseless Swing. It starts with like this really kind of like moody bluesy kind of riff that sounds like something off like like an Alice in Chains album or something. Like it's.
Oh, I know
quite,
what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got a bit of that kind of that Seattle kind of grunge vibe about it, and I'm thinking, I know Bill. What's his other project? Is it Gentleman's
Pistols? So good. Yeah.
But that's more that style, right? Well, it's more like kind of like rock based.
Yeah, that's like very 70s, like prog, like really more like Atomic Rooster.
Okay, cool,
Yeah.
cool. And and he is such an underappreciated and accomplished guitarist because I feel like he incorporates so many different styles of riffs, and it's all on display on this album. I mean, one of the track you mentioned it. I've written like a fucking mini essay on it. It's Flesh Ripping Sonic Torment Limited, which is, I'm guessing, an homage to their first ever demo, which was released back in, would have been the late 80s. That track is, I'm pretty sure that's their longest track. I mean, it clocks in at about just under 10 minutes.
Nice.
And it's got so many cool passages. It opens with a really stunning like acoustic passage before it's got like that kind of really classic sort of pummeling Carcass rhythm section and just really cool like dual leads. I couldn't find out whether or not how much the other guitarist that's touring with them has contributed to this album because he's not listed as being.
He's probably a live member.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I followed him on Instagram. I can't remember his name. I'm really sorry. He's like a young guy, so I'm assuming he's not like an original member.
I don't know his name.
Yeah.
Well, I will say one thing as well. Like Daniel Wilden, the drummer, does such a great job at the drums. They sound absolutely thunderous on the album. And as I was talking about Helloween, this album also has really organic sounding drums. Like it doesn't sound clicky. Because that's one I think compared to the drum sound on Surgical Steel, that sounded so much more processed than the drum sound on this album, which I think really helps the overall feel of the album sound so much more organic. And there's things he does and the way he plays is kind of almost paying homage to like the style that Ken Owens kind of helped develop, that traditional sort of Carcass, rhythm section. And I think he does a great job of kind of like incorporating things that Ken Owens would have done on a similar sounding song while still adding his own flair and creativity to it. I think he's a great, what a fantastic drummer to add to the band. I think he fits in so well.
I really love that. And I don't know if you feel that way, but I feel like I could kind of, the twin lead guitars, it feels so Wishbone-ashy now to me.
Oh yeah, I kind of see. Yeah.
Like I was saying when I listened to that album and then listening to this, like 1 or 2 weeks later, like I really like feeling the kind of 70s stuff in like a really low key way coming in, probably through Bill, because I feel like he loves the 70s stuff. I'm assuming he likes Wishbone Ash because why would you not?
Well, he was quoted as saying that he would describe this album as dad rock. It
has dad titles.
Yeah.
Like, they were obviously having so much fun when they wrote this album, and I feel like they were just like, yeah, whatever, we'll just do what we want. And I think it's worked really well.
Well, I think it came across super well because, like, you listen to, because I keep talking about Surgical Steel, might as well be reviewing that at this point. But, like, that is, no pun intended, quite a clinical sounding album. Like, it's quite razor sharp and quite a good frenzied sort of assault. Whereas this, I feel like, has more of a jammy sort of vibe to it, especially on the track like Flesh Rip and Sonic Torment, because there's just so much going in on that track alone to the point where they could have just released that one track and I would have been happy if they just released that as like an EP, like a Meshuggah Eye sort of deal where it was just one long track with loads of cool transitions. Like I would have been more than happy with that alone. But there's so many other great tracks on the album. Even just the thrashy vibe of Eleanor Rigor Mortis. It's got a real kind of old school kind of thrash feel to it. They do such a good job, as seen in like older tracks like Incarnated Solvent Abuse, which I've always mentioned, of doing really like moshable, like palm muted, like rhythm sections and guitar riffs. Like it's just so easy to headbang to, and it's like they're one of the few bands who, when I listen to them, I think, I can't wait to watch this live.
Yeah,
like, this is going to sound so sick live.
They're so tight live. They've always been so tight live.
So good.
Yeah, I have a shirt from when they did the charity shows at the Underworld, and it's like one of my favorite metal shirts. It's cool. Like so cool. It's got the Caduceus on it. I love it. Their merch is really good as well. I totally recommend supporting them and buying some of their merch. I love a lot of the references on this album. There's like loads of little references. Going on what you were saying, actually, before I go into references, about the clinical aspects of Surgical Steel, and this one being more like dad rock. When you said that, it made me think about the album covers, and like the cover of Surgical Steel is like super. I mean, Suicide Squad ripped it off with that Joker scene of Jared Leto, and he's, you know, when
did you
not realize?
Oh shit, yeah.
There's a scene in Suicide Squad where Jared Leto's like lying on the floor and he's surrounded by surgical tools, and it just looks like the cover of Surgical Steel. There you go. Like, they obviously Carcass fans.
Another reason to hate Jared Leto.
Fuck that guy.
Apart from having this weird, creepy island.
Like pedo cult island.
Yeah.
Yeah, really fucking weird. Anyway, I think that's a whole episode in itself where we cancel Jared Leto and nothing happens, but we get assassinated mysteriously a week later. Yeah, like the album cover for that is like super traditional, really like clinical, whereas this one reminds me more of actually kind of like a proggy album cover with like the heart made of vegetables.
Well, what I read was that this album cover is an homage to the Japanese kusozu concept, which is it was a thing where a lot of Japanese art would depict death and decay through works of art, often watercolor pieces.
Wow.
And that's what it was kind of a somewhat obscure reference to.
I love that.
So it's the heart, what made the vegetables slowly decaying.
That's fascinating. I really like how minimalistic the cover is. It's like very different to what I'm used to from then.
It's great. I think they've got quite a good history of doing quite strange covers. I mean, they were one of the first bands. If you look at the cover for Necroticism, they were pretty much the first band, which has been copied by so many bands since, to that kind of like view of like a coroner's table or pathology thing, where there was like some pictures of like like gory shit, and it was just, you know, it has almost like an almost comic-esque aesthetic to it. And like they're the first band to do that, and obviously Heartwork has the Geiger design, which is super cool. But just God, I just love this band so much.
They're just bloody brilliant, aren't they? I really loved how the first song on the album starts with a song called Dance of Ixtab. And I was like, what word is this? This is a strange word. So the first thing I do is I Google it, because why wouldn't you when you are confronted by a new and interesting word? And I discovered that Ixtab is a goddess from the Yucatan region of... Wow.
Oh, wow.
I did write it down.
It's like a Mayan goddess, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's like South America. Yeah, the Yucatan Peninsula, I'm pretty sure, is in Brazil, because it's like, if I remember correctly, a giant asteroid impact happened there. It vaporized like half the ground. You've got all these like cenotes, which they believed were the entrances to the underworld, but it's like a huge cave network full of like limestone, crystal clear water.
Yeah.
And they would like to put human sacrifices into the cenotes. They were like the mouths of the underworld, and you can like go diving in them, and it's just full of like skeletons and shit, which is
wild.
Pretty fucking cool. But anyway, Ixtab was a psychopomp, which means that when you die, she would accompany you to like wherever you're going to end up, and like guide you, like Dante's Inferno, etc., etc. But basically, she would accompany suicides to heaven. And at the time of the conquest, which is like around the early mid 1500s. She was around. No one really knows how old she is. Like, she's only really mentioned very briefly. But basically, there's a fucking sick quote. I'm gonna quote the quote. Basically, this is like some white guy. And he's like, they said also and held it as absolutely certain that those who hanged themselves went to this heaven of theirs. And on this account, there were many persons who on slight occasions of sorrows, troubles, or sickness hanged themselves in order to escape these things and go and rest in their heaven, where they said that the goddess of the gallows, La Diosa de la Horca, whom they called Ixtab, would bring them. Which makes it sound like people would just hang themselves on like the slightest mishap, which is probably not true. It's probably just this guy being like super patronizing, but it's really interesting. She's depicted as a rope woman or hang woman, and like the glyph is her, like it's really kind of dark and cool. Oh wow, I started to choke there. She's here. Whoa, guys.
Praise Ixtab.
please Ixtab, it's cool. We've got some Fessenjun next door. It's pretty interesting. I really like that they're, you know, doing loads of different things and not just like, okay, we only talk about medical stuff, and they do in the best way that they always do, but they also talk about other things too. I like that.
I think, do you know what? I think they probably have thought hard about that, because I feel like this is the sort of track where it would transition really well live. And I think there was a quote from, I don't know if you read the quote from Bill about this track. But I'll paraphrase it a little bit, but it was just like, oh yeah, it's a great anthemic song that's going to be a real festival, kind of like boot stomper. That'll never be heard live, because festivals will just be empty fields littered by loose lateral flow tests scattered in the winds. I was like,
I love them.
That's classic. That's
so Carcass, straight up. I love that about them. One thing I was going to say, I was going to be kind of wanky. I was going to use my super degree debt to make a reference to the romantic poet Wordsworth, who wrote "We Murder to Dissect," which I think is a very Carcass kind of deal, because like they have all these like super detailed lyrics that whenever I read them, I'm like, I have to Google this, so I end up dissecting it, and it's like fucking murderous. I'm like murdering the meaning of the song, but that's kind of what they want you to do, is to like look in, like they don't want you necessarily build, like Jeff isn't like, I want people, I don't think, to necessarily do that. It's music. But I felt like when I was reading the lyrics to Under the Scalpel Blade, I was like Googling all these words I was like, oh man, I'm like dissecting this, and I'm learning all these things about it. It's like completely changing, transforming the meaning of this thing, and I'm really enjoying it. So I dug that.
It's do you know what? I mean, that's one thing they've always been so good at, is just incorporating things, like whether it be the medical terms or just old like kind of archaic words, and it's just so like, it's just so cool, because I feel like, you know, it's a lot of lyrics can be quite sort of hackneyed a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And they're just like, you know, I just ignore lyrics most of the time. I mean, it's a shame I couldn't really find much sources for the lyrics for a lot of the tracks. I mean, I picked up on a few things, and you know, I'll talk a little bit about the vocals actually, because it segues quite well into that. One of the things I do like about Carcass is one the vocal style that they helped kind of make really popular in the death metal and just extreme metal scene. But also, I feel like they're really good at vocal placement of the lines.
Yes, yeah.
That, because a lot of times I've listened to a lot of death metal over the years where it'd be like, you know what, I would have liked to have heard that riff, but there was like somebody doing stupid gutturals over the top or shrieking over the top. Like, it would be good to scale that back a bit sometimes. And I feel like they've always had that kind of restrained in the mid era, I suppose, anyway, especially with like Heartwork and stuff. And that's one thing I'm really glad they brought back, is the fact that Bill's doing backing vocals again, because that's the style that I feel has been so influential. You could speak to any modern death metal vocalist or death metal vocalist from the 2000s. I remember watching the video. It was an interview with Travis Ryan from Couch Decapitation, who, in my opinion, is one of the better modern death metal vocalists. I mean, he's got such a range of techniques, and everything he does is just trying to emulate that sound of Jeff and Bill doing their dual vocal attack at the same time.
Oh, that's what the weird Skindred thing is.
Yeah, so it's like the high and the low, so it creates that kind of really monstrous, like amorphous blob of a vocal style.
It really is blob-like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so cool, and there's so many bands. I mean, I would even say Carcass were the pioneers of the first band to really do that high-low vocal style and just kind of mesh them together. And Deicide as well, to be fair, in a different way. Glenn Benton experimented with that a lot on a lot of the earlier Deicide albums, doing like the high shrieks and the guttural growls. But yeah, Jeff and Bill kind of done it in a way where it was achievable to do it live, because Glenn Benton would do a lot of vocal layering, so it would work in the studio, but to have no one else to do it with live. I think sometimes the bassist would provide backing vocals, but like Jeff and Bill would perform it live together. So amazing. That's what, as much as I love Heartwork, I'm always a little bit kind of just sad that there's not as much vocal diversity on that album as there is some of the other albums. It works for the album, don't get me wrong, but like, that's why I was so excited when Surgical Steel came out and I heard that like the backing vocals were there, because it's just being a vocalist and hearing like more dynamics in the different styles. It's always super cool to hear, and they do a great job of it in this album as well. Sometimes I felt like they had maybe a few guest vocalists on, because some growls that didn't sound like they were from either member of the band, but I did read that Dan, the drummer, did some backing vocals as well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and I thought Ken Owens might have done some, because Ken Owens did some backing vocals on Surgical Steel. So obviously they're very...
They do involve him in a lot of stuff.
Yeah, they're super respectful about that. And obviously, for those that don't know, I think, was it a stroke he suffered, or...
It was like cerebral something.
Yeah, so obviously, which is why he's not able to drum in Carcass anymore.
Did they get a hemorrhage?
I think so.
Yeah.
But like, I've always think it's been super cool how they've always been super respectful of how important a member of the band he was in helping create that sound. So yeah, it's just overall such a great album. I mean, there's just, what tracks do I want to give a special shout out to? Yes, Sonic Flesh Rip and Sonic Torment was a great fucking 10-minute track. Under the Scalpel Blade, I thought was a really good song. I heard that a while back though, because that was released
as a single.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's got a really cool... There's a lot of groove in this album, which I like. So there's more groove in this album than a lot of their earlier stuff. So in that way, it's a bit more similar to Swan Song in that respect. It sounds like a more refined, kind of more polished version of what they were going for on Swan Song, which isn't a bad album. I don't know why it's so maligned.
I like it. I think it's a good album.
It's got some great tracks, and it's ironic because I think Black Star from that album is the track that has the most hits on their Spotify page. So it just goes to show that, and like Keep On Rotting in the Free World is a great track as well.
Oh, it's such a banger. I love it. It's so
it's a great album. But
is Embodiment on that album as well?
I'm trying to remember.
The fucking verse riff on that is one of the best riffs ever.
I think it is actually.
So good.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But they're just so good, And Torn Arteries, this album, I think, is just a good amalgamation of different aspects of their style. That kind of mid-layer era, kind of mellow death mixed with that kind of that bluesy swagger that Swan Song had. But also there's some elements of necroticism on here as well. I mean, they pretty much left behind the grindcore sound of the first two albums, which makes sense, because I feel like that's a genre and that's a style that they helped really pioneer. But there was nowhere else for them to go, I don't think.
I agree. That's how I feel about it too. Yeah.
I think I even remember watching an interview of him on Headbangers Ball when would have been the 90s. I think it was when necroticism would have been dropping, and he was basically saying the same thing. It's just like kind of done with the whole grind thing, so we want to give a stab at trying this whole death metal sound that's becoming super popular. And then they released Necroticism, which was a great death metal album, and then yeah, just I could just talk forever, really.
The rest is history.
Yes.
Yeah, they're a fantastic band. Maybe we should just do an episode on them. If for some reason they happen to watch this and get this far, like, wow, you are like masochistic. Sorry for having to put up with us. Please, we will happily come to you and interview you, Carcass. We love you. And we'll be very respectful. We'll bring you some Iranian food and like do a psych card reading, and you can make loads of dad jokes. It'll be really fun.
Nice.
Yeah. On that note, final remarks?
Good album. No, I'm joking.
It's all right.
It's good.
It is good. It's fucking great. It's definitely one of my records of the year.
Nah, it's up there, and I think it's testament to how good they are as songwriters and musicians that they're still able to release music that's so kind of relevant and slots well into the modern sound of the scene after such a lengthy hiatus. And just because the great thing about them as a band is you watch them in interviews and stuff, and they're always quite self-deprecating and kind of unassuming at times. But on the same hand, I think they know how influential they are as well, and
they're humble, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm pretty sure I've watched Jeff talk about how he basically, with the release of Heartwork, it basically just allowed a lot of Swedish bands to come in and kind of clean up and make a lot of money off the back of that, which is it's true.
Yeah, they will say like what's on their minds, and I really respect that about them. Like when they've played live, they've criticized certain things that I'm glad they've criticized, and they have a fantastic history with being absolutely no bullshit and stuff like that. Yeah.
And so my last remark I'll say is I'll be looking forward to seeing them live at Damnation in about a month's time, just about.
Yeah.
So,
God.
So that'd be good. Look forward to that. Hopefully you'll hear some of the new tracks performed live.
That would be fantastic. I'm sure they're going to be playing some new stuff. They are so fucking tight live. I'm really gutted I'm not going to be seeing them. Yeah. And hopefully Jeff will be playing with the fan in front of him, so his hair will be like floating around.
Oh, he does love his fans, doesn't he?
He loves his fans.
Cool,
yeah, I love that. I think it looks great. And I think one day I'll do that too. Lucifer do it as well, actually. That looks very good. Yeah.
Imagine how shit it would be if I had a fan on stage.
You'd love it though. You'd love
that would
being
be
cold.
great, actually. Yeah, just from a personal comfort perspective.
You'd want one of those like Dyson ones that doesn't like make air, like the air move. You know the ones I mean? Just have like one of those and like cover it with like a cloth so it looks like a weird demon.
It's funny because I walked outside the other day and I actually thought of you because the first thing I thought. It was like a couple of days ago here in the UK, like the temperature just dropped, right?
Yeah, oh my God.
It like plummeted. And I walked outside and I was like, yes.
I was like, no.
Yeah, and I was thinking, somewhere in Hertfordshire, Nina's going to walk outside and be like, fuck, it's really cold now. And I'm just like, yes, it's cold again.
I thought of you as well. I literally said, oh, Floyd will be really happy. I'm pretty sure I said that. Yeah, oh God. Yeah, I've been bemoaning it because there's no heating in the bedroom. So I'm just like curled up in like multiple layers all the time at the moment. Yeah. Carcass, fantastic. Helloween, fantastic. Hashashin, fantastic.
Yeah, good week of albums.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for listening and engaging with us. Feel free to leave a comment. What should we do next? Who should we talk to next? And we will get on that. So thank you for listening and goodbye.
Till next time.